them. I want to thank everyone for coming once again for this night on with these three terrific photojournalists who cover protests in and around the country, which is really great. I want to thank Photo Daily, Epson, B&H, American Photography, and Photo Shelter for being our supporters. I ask everyone, and Jay will put it in the chat room, our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to, please do that. That would be great. And so tonight we have Michael Brochstein, who is out of DC, and we have Jaime Carrero, who's out of Dallas. And I've pre-recorded with Mark Edward Harris, who may come in later, who was out of the country, and we weren't sure if he was going to make it, but he did. He is back in the country, so maybe he'll be able to come in later on. And with that, Jay, hit the button, and here's my conversation with Mark. Beep. So I want to thank Mark Edward Harris for being with us today, who's going to share with us some work that he's done recently and in the past on protesting. And we'll get some insights from Mark on how he does it, why he does it, and where it's taken him. I want to thank our sponsors, which is Pro Photo Daily, Photo Shelter, Epson, B&H, and American Photography. And with that, Mr. Harris, it's all yours. So let's share your screen,
Great.
and
Well,
off we go.
yeah, and Frank, I appreciate you having me. You're going to see a really too busy desktop. Unacceptable, but it is what it is. Oh, sorry, I gave something away already before even showing
Mhm.
it. Um,
Okay.
I actually wanted to start with protesting about. I want to give our viewers a bit of background to what I do, and also sort of a global perspective uh, about being able to protest and not being able to protest and consequences and how I see a very dangerous thing developing here that growing up until recent times I would not think would be conceivable. I mean, just the other day, we have in MacArthur Park. Um, my friend Damien from Associated Press got great photos of it, of National Guard and ICE, combing through a park with Humvees and everything else, just completely unacceptable. And so, we tend to think of totalitarian regimes such as North Korea, which this photo, when you get to Pyongyang, North Korea, this is from my book, um, uh, North Korea, and I've been there 10 times. People might recognize this photo, which is the cover photo there. You can't protest. And so I thought we would talk about protest with places where you can't protest. Or if you do, you can't protest at all in North Korea. I mean, actually, you could. You could protest against the US if you wanted to, but you cannot protest against your own government. And that's a very, very dangerous thing. We take it for granted here that we could, but now we're starting to see a difference. And this is Iran. And so obviously, in the news recently, we all know what's going on with the Iran Israel conflict, and then the U.S. got involved. But Iran's the same. It's a variation of the same thing. This is actually a photo from the wall on the U.S. embassy, or the former U.S. embassy that was taken over. Uh, and so we see what's going on in Iran, and this is both of these are from my books, North Korea, and then my book Inside Iran. And so I've been to a lot of places. This is actually a museum. This is not, this is I don't think it's called a diorama, or maybe it is a diorama, but in Iraq, where they had the horrible chemical weapons
Mhm.
used against the Kurdish population. And so I want to show, and I visited the museums there, and I was there when Mosul was falling, which is outside of Kurdish Iraq, obviously. But anyway, I want to just sort of set the stage that we always think of this stuff happening over there.
Mhm.
And this is, and we talked about this when you had me on
Yeah.
for Ukraine, and so I just wanted to show a very simple uh, photo from my two trips to Ukraine during the war, that there are real human consequences for what we're seeing, all this political upheaval, and then you have what's going, Russia. trying to force their will on Ukraine, and there's a human toll to it. Obviously, I'm just expressing it through a Barbie doll, and we never know whatever happened to Barbie's human mother or father. Um, and we could look back in history and think about, when Japan started expanding during World War II, and then the war ended with Hiroshima, which this is Hiroshima, and then Nagasaki. But we always think about that as over there. The U.S. has really been spared that sort of thing. I mean, we've had, protests, obviously the civil rights protests. But what I've seen, in LA is really an unforced error. We've been dealing enough with the fires here. And then all of a sudden we've got this whole ICE thing going on. And then the protesters, and then, at a certain point, it turns into a riot. It's no longer protesting. When you start, destroying vehicles and setting them on fire.
Is that something that's more American than any of the other protests you've covered, Mark? Where it's a protest and then it ends up being a riot, right? Is that something that we own more than other countries?
Not necessarily. I think what happens is because we have more liberty here,
Mhm.
or at least we still have it, things are allowed to get more chaotic where they might be shut down faster somewhere else. Though you do see, like in Georgia, the protests against that took place and the involvement with Russia. You do see uh, things turning really ugly. Um, No, this is definitely not an exclusive U.S. thing at all, I would say. But I think the police in present day U.S., up until now at least, we tend to have a little more leniency before the police really come in. I think there's a real danger that that's going to change. And obviously, this sort of situation was allowed to really continue for a while. But no National Guard was involved with this. The Highway Patrol and LAPD had complete control of the situation. This concept that we needed the National Guard here, and certainly not the Marines, to quell this. I mean, this was a very small area. So there were five, of these driverless, cars that were set on fire, completely unacceptable, and playing into the other side,
Right. Yeah.
right? Which is a danger, because it's like saying, oh, you know, our action is justified because this is what's going on. So peaceful protest is something I believe in, and getting out in mass is very, very important. And so I think it's fine, carry flags, whatever you want to do, but it's when it turns violent, I think is a real danger. I think this is a really symbolic uh, shot, though, and
And
unfortunately, so go ahead.
yeah, and what do you think the role between the protester and the documentarian, yourself, and the other photographers, how does that play into what goes on? Like, are some people playing for the camera, or is it more spontaneous, or each one is different?
That's a fantastic uh, question. Uh, Definitely. I mean, even back, I remember when there were protests was it the Democratic or Republican convention here? I can't even remember in LA. I see people play for the camera. Once they start to do that, I turn away. Uh, this guy was actually, I think he was doing it for, I don't know if it was his girlfriend or somebody else was taking a iPhone photo, whatever, and I saw it, so I just ran over and grabbed a shot. I don't know who he is or uh, what he was doing, but the shot worked out well. Yeah, it's a question because people are always playing for the camera. They're very aware of the media, and both sides play it. Um, I think our role is just to try to document and not be involved, other than what Jim Noctway said. I think when we were in the UAE together, remember that great
Man.
conversations, and
Not
about
no
how
problem.
he gets involved. In other words, if he sees violence happening, he doesn't feel like he's the if somebody's being injured or whatever, he'll get involved. He was saying that it's a myth about non-involvement. He's
Mm,
talking about if something turns like if somebody's being beaten up or something, you know, he will get involved. It's not like, hey, I'm just a fly on the wall. I'm like in, Gregor and, Metamorphosis. I'm just a fly on a wall. I can't, be
right.
involved. And I'm the same way. So I'm just documenting whatever's going on. If something turned violent and I could help somebody in a bad situation, I would do that. If I think somebody was trying to do something uh, violent against somebody else for the camera, wouldn't shoot it. In other words, we are still human beings first. But our uh, role, I think, is just to document what's going on first. But if we're being played, then you do have to think about that. And so situations like this, boy, that's really right on the, if there was no video around there or
Right.
no still photography, would any of this be going on? Yes, it definitely would still be going on
Right.
because there's genuine anger at this unforced error of sending ice in and to make it like a military thing on a city that's under siege already because we're just digging out of the ashes of a fire 6 months earlier,
Right.
and the last thing we need is
Yeah.
this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Who has the energy for that, right?
Yeah, well, and also, look, this is costing tons of money. I mean, there's so many, the travel industry, LA in particular, Hollywood depends on money coming in for travel, and so many people have decided, hey, we're not coming in to this city or this state because of what's going on, or this country because of what's going on. Yeah, this is an unusual shot, right? Because it's, she pulled off her top. She's protesting. So, somebody could say, well, easily she's doing this to get, attention. And so does it take away from the very serious message that she's trying to convey and people are trying to convey? Um, these are all good questions. I don't necessarily have
Yeah.
the answer at all. Yeah.
Yeah. You know that, those are those types of circumstances where if you're not telling a story behind the image,
Mm.
then you just don't know.
It's true. Sometimes you need the word to fill in
Yes,
the
absolutely.
blanks. Yeah. But once again, these poor cars, and that are just trying to, electric cars that are just trying to alleviate the issues, here with smog and all that, and they are victims to this. Definitely doesn't seem to be moving the protesters' message forward. And this is a very small group of
Mhm.
protesters that are involved in this type of violence, though there were a lot of people that were throwing down things at the uh, highway patrol that were on the freeway below, and I'll show some images from that. But I start off showing basically what happened is I got there fairly late in the day, and this was just starting to happen with these cars. And so this was as I parked in Chinatown, and this really was a very small area. This was June 8th when the worst of these whole protests in LA went down. I parked in Chinatown, so I had an exit out from a
Mm.
safer area in case things really turn ugly or that we were, blocked out. And so I just sort of hiked in from there past Elvira Street. And Frank, you know LA well. So Elvira Street was
Yeah.
really where that area is where LA started,
Right.
in the late uh, 18th century. And originally it was part of New Spain. And then Mexico took it when Mexico had independence. And so we are Los Angeles, City of the Angels, right? That's Los
Yeah.
Angeles. It actually, that's a bit of the irony is that it really was part of, Mexico. Um, but this is pretty sad. I'm hearing the F word so much, F Trump, F ICE. I think if you want to convey a message, uh, once you start using, F-bombs everywhere. It's really more for yourself or your group. It's not, I think, the
Right.
way to move things forward. And I think to write this, on a mural about Elvira Street defeats I understand the frustration completely. I mean, Mark Rabu, in his photographs, from Vietnam, said he wouldn't go in and shoot dead people, close up when he did his coverage there, that he could convey the message in a different way. He said people close their eyes to it.
Ah,
That's a conversation we had maybe almost 25, 30 years ago now.
yeah,
But I think he's right. And remember that great photo that he has of the flower being put in the rifle. I,
right.
I mean, look at that. To this day, we still see that photo, and look how much it conveys. So I think there's ways to convey things without making people close their ears or their eyes to things. And I think that this doesn't if your goal as a protester is to bring attention to something and say why it's bad, and you could do this with mass protests, and I think we saw that much more in the No King's Day protest. But to bring in Marines, and I feel bad for these guys. They don't want to be there. A U.S. Marine uh, shouldn't be on the streets of LA. This is not an insurrection. This is not, it is so wrong and so unnecessary.
Yeah.
And as I said, the whole protest was in a very small area of LA and really under control from local law enforcement. Uh, and so an issue's coming. And so, you could see that it really could have turned much uglier. There was enough firepower around to turn
Right.
something worse, and people are going to start dying. Or by the time this airs, I'm sure people already have. We had a shooting the other day because somebody attacked a a border patrol area, and so they had to respond with lethal force. I mean, that's reality. But I think that in the not too distant future, if things continue to go this way, uh, we're going to have some really bad incidents. And I'm not a negative person. I tend to be very upbeat and positive. Uh, in a conversation with Mary Ellen Mark years ago, I said something about when she was talking about Streetwise. I said, "Oh, I hope Tiny's doing better." She goes, "Hope has nothing to do with it." It's like, ooh, Mary,
Yeah.
you knew Mary Ellen, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so, but she's very reality, so like
Yeah.
let's
You know,
see.
it is crazy when you see photographs like this, and you imagine this is like our streets. This isn't a third world country, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it is really unbelievable.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to show those other photos first to sort of set the stage that we think of it as over there, or we could think of it back in time, during the
Right.
60s with Vietnam or civil rights, in the 50s. But we tend not to think of it here. And then for our photographer friends out there, you do have to think technically still and all when you're shooting this. So this was with a 14 to 24, and I wanted to pull a lot of depth of field. Where often, I like to shoot with shallow depth of field, to really bring the viewer to where you want them to see. But here, I wanted all the writing to to
Mm,
to be legible. And so I was maybe at f/16 or something like that, really closed down so we could get both the words and then the highway patrol that were doing a very necessary job. I definitely don't want to make them look like the bad guys or the
yeah,
protesters.
yeah.
It's bad. Uh, they're just doing their job because the protesters had taken over the freeway and the highway patrol are blocking. They had cleared the protesters from the highway, from the freeway, and they were blocking them from going back in. So this is what they had to do, and they actually showed a lot of restraint. But then, things as they always do, especially later in the day, it happens as it starts to get a little toward late in the afternoon, dark. That's when people who are instigators who want to cause trouble tend to
Mm,
do things. It's such a typical pattern.
yeah.
Um,
Why do you think that happens that way, Mark?
Well, under the cover of darkness, later on, things can happen. And so all of a sudden, later, when you're breaking into stores and stealing shoes and stuff, what does that have to do with, the
Right.
message about protesting? And that's relatively small group of people. And so part of it is the cover of darkness, but that's really a little bit later. Uh, I just think there's a group agitation that gets more and more, and then the police or law enforcement wants to, regain control before it gets dark, because that's when things go down. And here you can see they're shooting non-lethal rounds. So there were both rubber bullets and flashbangs, which I think is what's coming out of that one officer's gun. But it's still very dangerous because if you get hit by that, and there was a reporter, I believe she was from Australia, got hit right in the back on live TV, and it was a guy obviously aiming right at her. But then these are people, and I'm standing next to them, and they had thrown some stuff down. I gather I didn't actually see them throw something down, but they were being shot at with these non-lethal weapons, and so they're hitting the ground. And
Mm.
so, obviously these things can take an eye out. But if you're standing there and you can see the legs of other people there, if you're standing there throwing things down at police or highway patrol, you have to expect a response, right? And so these guys, and like this one guy in the foreground is not wearing goggles or anything like that. And so if one of these non-lethal rounds hit him in the eyes, he's blind. And so people really have to think in terms of the dangers of this. And it's just a matter of time till things, go down like that. I mean, we see what happened, first of all, for people who don't know, my background so much, my master's is in history, and so I'm always acutely aware of connecting dots. But you think about what happened at Kent State
Yeah.
and what that, did. And so we don't know how these things can spiral out of control.
Yeah, I mean, like when you see things like this,
Yeah.
and the whole event, you know, part of it feels like watching those people, especially just the legs. Like that one. I don't know if that's a girl or a guy on the right, on the far right. It's
Yeah.
like she could be at a coffee bar having a coffee, right? Just by her legs,
100%,
right?
100%. Right. And a nice cell phone,
Right.
attached to her
Yeah,
leg. Yeah.
she's got it all going on, and
Yeah.
there's a piece of it like, are you wondering like, are some of these people just opportunists?
Well,
Like,
first of all, a lot of these people are very sincere. Like the people that are still
yeah,
standing there are very sincere protesters that are not throwing things,
right.
that are not there to do violence, but to express their outrage in what's going on. But they happen to be standing next to people that are there to do something. Uh, and because these non-lethal rounds are not very accurate, they could easily
Is that right?
be hit by something. Yeah, because they don't have the uh, you
The
know,
shell,
well, the force of a bullet and the aim, the is going to be much straighter than a rubber
right?
bullet shot at a distance or these flash bangs. I mean, I was standing at another moment where a flash bang thing hit the 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 guardrail, and just splintered off. And things just went right by me. And like right here, something went right by me. But so it's just who knows? So these people, I don't know if those people standing up there, if any of them threw things down. There were a lot of people throwing things down, but there were a lot of people just standing there looking down and holding signs and yelling. Um, and so, but a lot of people are there to try to express their feeling. I mean, I think this shot really conveys something. So you can see the right side, our right, um, is empty because that's the side that had been closed down,
Uh,
and we're just the highway patrol cars down there, and then you can see the left side. They still managed to keep open, amazingly enough, uh, but. I think there's a lot of symbolism right here, obviously, because of the hat he's wearing. You have a feeling that he's Mexican American. uh, I think there were very, if any, people that would be illegal aliens at this, and the people that were did violent actions were almost 100% American citizens. I don't think you would have somebody that was here illegally rolling the dice and being out there. And they tend to be very hard workers. And
Yeah.
the last thing they're going to be doing is something like that. And I think this guy was just, this is the way to protest, I think.
Yep.
I'd like to see, this is a way to make a point. Because it is, the begs the question, what is it to be American, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you live in the dream, right? But you have
well,
rights. You have rights, right?
we have I mean, this country does stand for the greatest ideals, but we have to live up to them. And I think we're really under siege right now. And it's shocking to see. It is really shocking to see. And as I said, as a student of history, you think, oh, that can't happen here. But usually those are the most dangerous words to
Right.
say.
Yeah.
Um, I mean,
It's
just like, when we've talked other times about Ukraine, you know, Kyiv is a beautiful modern city. You can't conceive that, wow, is this really happening? Or when I was in Odessa before, way before the war, wouldn't think of what's going on. Though, of course, during World War II, that was a different ballgame. But in recent history, and then going back years later during the war, it's like, is this really happening? But there's a kind of a thread between a couple of different photos. This is now a guy waiting for the protests to begin at the No King's Day. And
okay.
so I just thought this was an interesting photo. I don't know if I don't think there's any profound statement there other than interesting photo, at least to me. Um, I think this is a great statement. What's interesting, though, I saw this a lot with kids. Parents are using, their kids to make statements. Um, but I think this really conveys an important point. I purposely chose the photo with the mom's hand in it still because I think that sort of conveys
Yeah.
that sort of mixed feeling I have.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's a learning lesson for the kid, right? I mean, that the mom and dad are teaching them,
a
right?
100%. And
Yeah, it's a
so
beautiful thing.
it is, but I am concerned, because what we learn everything at this age, and so you have people on the other side learning other things, right? And so it's great when kids could just be kids, right? And play and
That's
do
true
things.
too.
Yeah, but we're in this situation now. But this is a beautiful statement, right? I mean, this is with the flowers.
Yeah.
And,
But that's also
but
part of it, right? Because you have so many different sides to it.
yeah,
Is it being, using your kid as propaganda, all these different sides to it. Is she too young to be, she should be worried about her plants growing in her backyard
yeah,
than, standing around protesting, but it's all of the above. What is right? What is wrong?
100%, 100%, 100%. And I'm a Libra, so getting me to make a decision on that
Oh, is that right?
yeah.
Okay.
So maybe that's why it's like easy for me to like just I'm just documenting what's there, you
No,
know.
but that is
Yeah.
that. So
Right.
what was your point to make sure that you had the mom's hand in there?
Well, I wasn't making sure in a sense, but that's the photo I chose.
Right. That's
In
what I
other
mean.
words, because I'm never gonna say, hey, can you hold this or
Yeah,
this?
yeah, yeah.
And it's just that when I saw this particular frame, maybe I shot 5 or 6 frames, but the one where she was holding the sign with her, um, it just conveyed that the parents are still the ones behind the message.
Okay. Not better
Whether
or worse, right? Just that that's part of it.
Yeah, right, exactly, exactly. And so where here's an older gentleman, he obviously was in the Vietnam War area or Vietnam War era. Just you could just tell by his age. And so who knows if he was in Vietnam or not, or his background at all, but he's been around.
Right.
And but I think this is the way to protest.
Yeah.
This is the way to for me. In other words, it's nonviolent. He's got a message. There were too many, and I'm not going to show them. There were some, posters with Trump, with his head being blown off or whatever. I just, and then everybody's chanting F this, F that. Or I shouldn't say everybody, not everybody at all. That's the point. But a lot of people, that
Yeah.
just closes people's ears to things. If something like this conveys it much more. And I think something like this, if you want to do this, that's okay, a political parody kind of thing.
So,
That's
Mark,
great. Yeah.
with all the protests that you've covered,
Yeah.
is the population markedly different this time?
That's a great question, Frank. Right, because this is right when we had the Black Lives Matter protests and all, but that was really the same kind of thing, the solidarity
Right.
of people, um, and same sort of thing here. It's not divided into by color, uh, religion or whatever. Funny enough, I think it's almost sort of like Los Angelinos or Angelinos and Californians are really banding together to say this is not right. Um, what's going on? And of course, these No Kings protests were all over the country. I mean, obviously, I think it probably has a lot still, the division, between Democrats and Republicans is probably the big division. Though I don't know these people's party. There might have been Republicans out there that are feeling disillusioned.
Right.
Uh, but that's a good thing when you have all sorts of races and religions that are mixed together with a common theme. And so this basically was a peaceful protest late in the afternoon. Things got somewhat ugly again, but the police showed a lot of restraint and moved the crowds, but nothing horrible happened. But unfortunately, I really do think you just can't keep getting away we just can't keep dodging a bullet, so to speak.
Yeah.
And things can turn really violent. And so this right here, I think this was uh, a veteran, could have been from one of the Gulf Wars. But there's a lot of serious people out there that are trying to make a point and are very, very, very concerned with
Mm.
what they're seeing. And
And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, another piece of this is how easily the media can play a role in turning this thing upside down. Because if you have one knucklehead who really does something bad,
yeah,
right, and then that becomes the coverage,
yes,
right? Now, all of this into this nice, what appears to be a peaceful demonstration, people
yeah,
just hearing their voices, it becomes something else. And now you have a Kent State kind of a moment, right?
100%.
Where all of a sudden, someone gets shot because somebody's a real crazy. Uh,
Yes,
then you're off to the races, and then how that escalates everything.
100%. And this is the danger.
Mm.
When we think of Kent State, we don't think about how everything was up until that point. We only think about that point. When we see in Vietnam with the monk burning of emulate was self-emulation. I don't say the word right.
I know.
English comes so hard to me, but we remember that moment.
Right.
But that is a form of peaceful protest, what he was doing, what the
Yeah.
monk was
He
doing.
wasn't bothering anyone else. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And he really did make a profound statement. And
It
so,
really
right, you
stopped.
have these moments that overshadow everything else. And that's the danger. In other words, with all this peaceful protest was going on, and I think about basically the No Kings protests were peaceful, and I think they made a great point. Look how I think people came out the other end of this. Uh, they didn't give the ammo to the president to go further, to go heavier in, saying, "Oh, look at this! Look what they're doing to our cities." LA was not saved. We were not going to be burning to the ground. This was a tiny area. It's just, and then when you have, somebody come in from Department of Homeland Security and says they're going to save us from socialism and this or that. It is so outrageous. It is really, and that's why this is very rare for me to speak this way. I usually just show the photos,
Yeah.
but and it's not just as an Angelino or a Californian, but as a student of history and an American, that this is not what we stand for. Is the this unbelievable overreach, and
But
this was
you were there, and you saw the vibe of the crowd, and that, like we were saying before, it's the context that journalists give to these images gives you a sense of this is really what was going on.
exactly. But as you said, if one person, because nobody's being screened going into this area. If one person pulls out a gun and shoots somebody, then all the cameras, including mine, will descend on that area, and it becomes about that, and everything else gets completely
Right.
overshadowed. And
Right.
so I conclude, with this photo because I still believe this, and as I've seen around the world, from the hundred and I think I'm around 108 countries and 7 continents or whatever, been on in all sorts of countries on all parts of the political spectrum. But in every place, I tend to focus on daily life, how people are just living there, whether it's North Korea, Iran, Iraq,
Mm.
Lebanon, Israel, wherever. I focus 90 on the 99.9% of the time of our existence when people just going about their daily lives. And I love this statement, but unfortunately, um, we're very tribal, and so
Right.
and so we don't. I love this theory, um, but I don't know if we'll really ever uh, get to this understanding. And people do say, right, if we were ever invaded from from another planet, that's when we will all come together.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, they say we've only, we're only together on a few certain times, in our history. One was the OJ trial, one landing on the moon,
Yeah.
JFK assassination, and there was
Yeah.
one other one. But when we were all talking and thinking about the same thing at one time. Um,
That's 100% correct, right? I mean, right, you're right. You think about yeah, I
and
could
9/11, and 9/11.
9/11. But yet, even 9/11, you couldn't say we were all on the same page because there were people celebrating, uh, 9/11 too. And so, but I would say the moon landing maybe is that's the ideal.
Yeah.
So it took getting off our planet to bring us together.
There you
See?
go.
Yeah, yeah.
That,
But
that's
at least it was within our solar system. We didn't have to go that far. We didn't even have to go to another planet. We just had to get to our own moon.
yes, right. Our moon, right?
Yeah, and it might be right, and it might be, if we go forward, with Mars and put an international team on Mars, then we would be all together. So it's not impossible uh, for humans to be all part of the same tribe under
No,
conditions, but
no, you're 100% right. I mean, it takes a little effort. It takes a little bit of letting your hair down and listening to the other person, right? I mean, it's beautifully idealistic. I mean, that's the experiment of this country, right?
yes,
It's all of us coming together, and like all those people from these different different organizations. They're all ancestors from somewhere else, and
100%.
right, we all are.
Yeah, and it really is. You're right. I mean, if you look, I just watched the other day, the great film that was a stage musical, 1776,
Mm,
and you look at the founding fathers. Many of them had slaves. They were all white men,
right.
basically same religion. And so if you look at that, but they had the ideals, and it's only really since the 60s that we really have been living those ideals. I think that we finally broke down the walls. I mean, we had a segregated army, through World War II. It was Truman, and then finally, black and white troops got to fight together in the Korean War, but not in World War II. Of course, African Americans contributed a lot in World War II, but they were separated. I mean, even Japanese Americans that got out of the internment camps were allowed to fight, like the 442nd,
Mm.
uh, in Europe. And so it's like that's outrageous that African Americans were segregated and yet we're fighting for freedom. But we have been able to see a lot of fantastic progress in the right way. So it hasn't been stagnant at all. And that was my point about from the founding fathers till now. And so
Right.
we really are, and we had Barack Obama as president. We've had so many positive things. And it didn't matter if Obama was Republican, Democrat, or whatever, but the point is, people that we never would have thought would have been electable, the U.S. rose to the occasion, and I think that is so important for us to keep in mind. And so we do get, we do, get these detours along the way, but the danger is when does a detour get into a spot where it is completely blocked off and there's no way around it. And this is something I don't think we've really faced before. And if we're not careful, uh, we don't want to have this permanent detour. And and maybe most people think, oh, that's just not possible here. But I think we're seeing things that we never thought possible. I mean, what's your take on that?
No, no, I couldn't agree with you more. It's a scary time. I guess I don't know if I'm more lazy in thought, like because I'm really of the school like that really can't happen. That really can't happen. And
Yeah,
so I think that's probably a hiccup in my thinking because you look at what happened on the Capitol. I mean, my God,
exactly.
they don't get
Exactly, 100%. Who
they
would
don't
have thought that could have happened?
you don't get
Number
Pence out
one.
of there and you don't get Pelosi out of there. Would
No.
those people have killed them?
Yes,
Right?
correct.
You're like,
Yeah.
really, would that have actually happened? And thank
Right, and
God.
if Pence had gone along, uh, what would have happened to democracy? What would have happened? In other words, we're
I mean, it's
really,
this close.
yes, exactly. And I think that's the point, that I'm really trying to convey. We do have this, it can't happen here thing.
Yeah,
You
I've
know,
drank that Kool-Aid. Yeah, I have to say.
right. Yeah,
And,
the run up to,
right.
I mean, if you look at Germany before World War II, there were a bunch of federated states, and then Hitler knocked down the strength of those federations. And we think, oh, you can't equate, that with what's
Yeah.
happening here. But, Berlin, ultra modern city, we had great movements, that were, like the Bauhaus and art and all that. In other
Mhm.
words, you know, they have the Autobahn, all this modernity. You think, oh, that can't happen here. But then all of a sudden it does. And then you can go back in history and say, oh, okay, now, but you don't get a perspective when you're within something. It's only from
Yeah,
history. And so people
yeah,
will have a perspective years from now on this period of time, uh,
right. Yeah,
of our history, which hasn't been written yet. But we have to stay vigilant. What can we do about it? Well, I think the peaceful protest is a way to get the point across. And I think that the No King's Day uh, protest, I think, at least showed that there's a lot of people uh, on roughly
diligent,
the same
very diligent.
page.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
No,
we'll,
you're 100% right. We have to watch we have to watch all the time. We just do. Um
yeah.
and with that, Mark, I cannot thank you enough for coming in and sharing wisdom as well. It's not just the images, it's the wisdom behind it that really brings value to the entire Harris presentation.
I appreciate it, Frank. It's always an honor to be with you on here. So thank you so
And
much.
so safe travels as you run around the globe, and
Yeah.
as you know, there's always a spot for you here to show us new work and inspire us. So
I'll take you up on it.
all right, it's a
100%.
date. It's a date. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay, safe travels. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay, safe travels. That was terrific. Even the second time around, and Mark is actually here with us. He did come in. He's in the country of Georgia at the moment. So, and I just want to ask Mark one question, then we'll go right to Jaimie. Patricia Garrett had an interesting observation about the No Kings protest, and she looked at it from looking at it, seeing it from a generational standpoint, that there were young people, middle-aged people, senior people. Mark, any thinking about that around protests? I mean, around those particular protests of seeing the age the age variety there. If you unmute, Mark, you got to unmute. Mark, you have to unmute. Or Jay, you have to unmute Mark.
Yeah, I
There you
think did I get unmuted?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I'm not in Georgia. I wrote that Georgia thing just when I was writing earlier to say that I was referring to the country of Georgia, the Russia
Ah,
Georgia
okay. Okay.
protest. Um, I'm back in LA. I was in Ukraine until Sunday or Friday. Um, well, the great thing, if we could take positives away from anything, is the protests now are not races and religions pitted against each other. So you see all sort people of every race, religion,
Okay.
color, whatever. And so that's totally different. So that was a very good observation. And so that's a very positive thing. But it is interesting since we last talked, we've seen all the horrors that have got on. There's been a number of shootings with ICE and then, the recent assassination. And so unfortunately, the things that we talked about in that before
Done.
is really 100% moving forward. And then the rhetoric now, I just read Elon Musk, but calling for, just there's a lot of it's a dangerous path ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. So are you able to stay with us, Mark?
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Okay. All right, Michael, you're up.
Okay, 1 second. Let me share my screen. So
Great.
I photographed a lot of protests, and I noticed over time some signs were better than others. So this presentation is mostly about the signs.
Mm.
So I came up with a few rules for creating signs that would be effective. You have to be able to read them from at least 8 feet away. Don't use script. You want signs to be rigid, not too flexible, otherwise it'll bend in the wind. Clever wording is good. Being succinct, too many words, no one will read it. High contrast colors, no yellow on white. Use both sides of the sign so when you hold it up, people can see behind and in front of you. Or you could just flip it around when needed. They should be held level, not crooked, or the pictures won't be useful as much. Illustrations are effective, but not too convoluted. If you're in front of a landmark, you want your back to the landmark because the landmark makes it more newsworthy. In front of the White House is newsworthy. In front of Lafayette Park is not so newsworthy. As an example, and that would be the case if you're on Pennsylvania Avenue on the north side of the White House. Try to separate yourself from someone directly in front of you. If someone's standing directly in front of you, then no one can see the sign. It's useless. It's a waste of time. But people do that. Four-letter words. News media won't use them. So they may be funny, interesting, appropriate possibly, or clever, but the news media won't print those pictures and did it for TVs. They don't do that. Try to make them light for practical reasons, and take into account practicalities of transportation. Um, Humorous is better. Try to be creative and unique without compromising.
And
Well,
Michael, where do you teach this class, right? You're a professor at a university?
no, I just came up with these
I'm,
over
I'm
time
kidding. I'm
because
kidding.
I've been frustrated by well-meaning, some intelligent signs that were just ineffective. I mean, so
Yeah.
far for what the purpose they meant it for.
No, but that, like Robert said, we're glad that you worked that out for us. That does make for a perfect collegiate course at the ICP. uh,
Right.
for photojournalists.
So after Trump was reelected earlier this year, there were a lot of demonstrations in the Washington, D.C. area. None were pro-Trump. It had to have been a pro-Trump ones. I would have covered them also, but there simply weren't. Um, so all these protest signs you're going to see are from not from pro-Trump demonstrations. I did see one couple in all the demonstrations wearing Trump paraphernalia, holding a Trump flag, but that's not really a protest sign. That's just sort of wearing T-shirts and maybe holding up a flag. So I don't consider those protest signs, and as you'll see. Um, so let me give me 1 second. Oops. Oh, now it's working. Give me 1 second to back up. Okay. So um, you're now going to see about 6 minutes of signs. Let me see if this works. The capitals in the background. Some of these are very clever. At least I think so. And these are all signs that I believe somebody actually created, not just, some organization handed them out.
Hmm.
Most of these are on the mall near the Capitol. A couple ones in front of the Heritage Foundation. That's the Heritage Foundation on the right, on the mall. 14.3 is a part of the Constitution, a part of it. I saw a few AI signs, it's fairly new, to use AI to generate a sign.
So, Michael, as you're going through these, just a question. Um, do you feel an obligation or do you feel shortchanged? Crazy question, that you don't have the other side of the conversation, the other side of the argument? I mean, I know it wasn't there, but is there a moral piece to that?
I mean, on some level, you're supposed to show both sides of an issue, but
Yeah.
but the other thing is I'm just documenting
What is that? What's there?
what is there as opposed to, and they simply weren't,
Yeah.
pro-Trump. They weren't upset. They were happy that their guys got into office. This protest was a lot of veterans. There's a couple of them that were.
And as you're doing all of these different protests, are there common threads? Or are there things that all of a sudden shoot up and say, "Wow, I haven't seen that"? You know,
Occasionally, there's a clever sign that, boy, this was a nice original idea. Um, there's a lot of creativity. So I marvel and I admire the creativity in some of these signs. They're not just repeat signs.
Yep.
So I have signs I photographed which are just some organization hands out, but those aren't as interesting on
Yeah.
some level. They make a point. They're effective on some level, but these are all signs that somebody personally made. They're one-off signs. They're not signs that,
Mm.
there are definitely places where they just handed out signs and, everybody's carrying the same sign. So I'm sort of admiring the creativity. And as I said, AI is definitely used for some of these signs. A couple of women dressed up as witches, and they made a few signs.
And Michael, speak to us about the little network that you're part of, where people know about, each protest that's coming.
I'm I'm in a signal group with a number of photojournalists in the DC area. Not a large group, it's a small group, but it's sort of like supporting each other. If somebody hears about something, they'll, or it's like resources, to let each other know, that kind of thing, which is nice. It's collegiate, it's not like most I mean, there are a number of news outlets or wire services that employ uh, photographers, and they of course share information among themselves. But if you're an independent like me, then you don't have natural colleagues that work for the same organization, all trying to get. So technically, we're all competitors, but it's collegiate. We're competitors, but it's not like I crowd you out, because I
Yeah.
took the picture.
And do you before you go, do you have a sense that this could get really become an angry crowd? I mean, do you think about that element? Are you wearing, a flak jacket? What do you do?
These the protests that are on these subjects are generally very mild. I mean, they're family friendly events, as you can see from the people here.
Right.
Appropriate to have a kid there. Though I'm
Nice.
not really worried. There are subjects that some of the Gaza ones, the pro Gaza, pro Palestinian, they can burn flags, deface monuments. Um, so those could be, and obviously, you know, going back, I know people during the Black Lives Matters demonstrations where somebody got a flash bang grenade or tear gas or something or other. But these are just good vibe kind of, everybody's on the same page.
Right.
There's no point in getting violent. I don't think these people are thinking along those lines. Um, so no, I don't think about it. I own a gas mask. I own a ballistic vest, with the plates, and I own a ballistic helmet, but I never even think about bringing it to these things.
Yeah.
What's interesting, I'm from New York City. In DC, like on January 6th, was my only time experiencing tear gas. Why do they use tear gas in DC and not New York City? Because tear gas is a force multiplier. One cop with a tear gas canister is like having, 20 cops without one. Sorry. But in New York, you have so many more cops, you never need to worry about being outnumbered.
Right.
So, fortunately, except for that one time on January 6th, I've never had to deal with tear gas.
And do you observe the crowd as well, Michael? And
Yeah,
do you see differences in, more normal, more, what does the crowd look like these days protesting?
it's as you can see from the people there, they're just average people, it looks like.
Right.
Some young, some definitely not young, and I'm not sure there's any pattern there.
Right.
Think that, yep, there we go. If anyone wants to download, I have a book which you could download a PDF with 100 of these. Let me stop sharing.
Okay. And then get that off your website, Michael?
Yeah, 1 second. Give me 1 second. Hold on, hold on. Share. Where is that? Uh, which one? So that's where it is. It's on my website. You can download. It's about 150 pages, and it's just protest signs.
Fun.
So it's nothing very profound. As I told you, as I've said before, these are not like award-winning photos that just stand, the napalm girl, the priest emulating himself there. It's sort of a documentation of signs, which after a while, I came to admire the good signs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a message. I mean, people have. I mean, I mean, like so many of us, we're upset about this, we're upset about that. But for the person who sits down, writes the sign, and then that's going like the next step. Where certainly the large majority of us don't do that.
Yes, and the creativity of some of these signs, the wording and or the illustrations, as you saw, some are even AI generated. Somebody came up with an idea. So I admire that. I'm not sure I personally can come up with as clever set of words, on signs as some of these people.
Right. And are there protests, Michael, that you won't go to? For either political belief or you think it could get violent. I mean, are there things you will stay away from? And you don't have to tell me what it is, but are you
Um,
apprehensive sometimes?
Sometimes there's an issue which I know will get covered, some demonstration, but I have a real problem. Maybe I have some problem with the issue, and I feel I don't necessarily always have to be the one creating images, news images of the demonstration that I'm not comfortable with on a personal
Mm,
political level. Um, so it'll get covered. I don't have to be it, but occasionally I cover those also. I mean, it
right.
depends. I'll cover just about anything. I've covered, I saw the Proud Boys, which are not exactly, I'm not exactly a member of the Proud Boys, but that's a legitimate thing. I mean, I do sometimes, I'm not saying with them, but I am sometimes more aware of my personal safety issues in some. But truth be told, all the ones I showed you are family friendly events, unambiguously mellow, um, good vibe kind of things. So it's not really an issue.
And do you think, I mean, just digging a little bit deeper, do you feel as a photojournalist you have a responsibility to cover the ones that you don't agree with just because
Oh, I
the
definitely, if there was a pro-Trump demonstration in Washington, D.C., and I was available and there was nothing else like, was a higher priority to cover, I go cover it. No question about it.
okay. Yeah.
No issue. It's just a matter that there aren't. I covered multiple Trump rallies in 2016 and 2020. I didn't do 24 because they were very restrictive on letting in photojournalists. If you notice at Butler, when he was shot, only four photojournalists had generated photos because that was basically what was there. Um, they're very restricted. But I applied to multiple Trump rally, events, but me and a lot of other people did not get in.
Right. So is there like sort of a master list? Oh, this guy works for this paper, this publication. There's no reason to let them in. I mean, is
I'm sorry.
bless you. Is there that kind of a bias? I mean, like a
Um,
blacklist?
my impression is every place that runs, well, where there's constricted access. Obviously, these protests anybody could walk up to, but where it's a rally, where it's a private event, even if it's a big event, the organizers make decisions about who they want or maybe not want. And generally, if you let in the top handful of news outlets, your pictures are going to get out there. I
Right.
mean, if somebody they want to run a picture from a Trump rally and only four organizations got in to shoot it, well, those organizations, every news outlet could access and license those photos, so it's not really an issue. Getty, AP, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Great. Okay. Good. And how far in advance do you know that a protest is happening? And I mean, is it the more advanced notice? Usually, that's a bigger one,
Uh,
what's the dynamic around that?
Probably the more advanced notice means the more organized, you
Okay.
know, and necessarily larger. That is a probably a gross generality. That's true, but I'm sure there's
Okay.
exceptions. And then there are protests where they don't give much notice or whatever because they're doing something which they're going to get arrested for or whatever. And if they don't want to necessarily give too much notice so that they wouldn't be blocked from it. Um, my decision to cover comes down to the newsworthiness, my availability, and what else is I could be doing that same day, and if I'm available at all. So every time it's just what's there today,
Right.
or tomorrow, and or how newsworthy. Some of January 6th, which I didn't know was going to turn out to be what it was. That was the logical event to photograph that day, even before what happened, in the afternoon.
Right. Yeah. And from an availability standpoint, being a freelancer, right? So you shoot it and then you just immediately get to your wire service
Yeah,
and
I
and
generally go home, edit, and file as fast as possible, within reason.
right. Okay. And the with the hope that one of these wire networks will pick you up,
There
right?
are plenty of like there are weekly demonstrations, and so I don't know if you remember in Boulder, Colorado, somebody threw a Molotov cocktail at one of these vigils for the hostages in Gaza, like about 2 months ago,
Yeah.
3 months ago, whatever it was. There's a bunch of those vigils around the country that happen weekly, including that one in Boulder. There's one in New York, there's one in DC, and I'm sure there's plenty of others. I photographed a couple of those, one in New York and one in DC, a couple in DC. But truth be told, unless a news article is being written, they don't need a photograph. So
Right.
photograph it once, maybe twice, but the pictures, even if they're good, there's no demand for those photos. So at some
Right.
level, I look, I'm not going to go every week to the New York one. I mean, it's going to look the same. And unless they need an article with the latest photos, it's just, it's a waste of my professional time.
Right. I mean, so there's a practical piece to this as well,
Right.
right? Supply and demand, right? Which is sort of an interesting piece of being a photojournalist covering protests. Where are these going to be seen? They may not be seen.
On the other hand, there's a pro Ukraine, fund Ukraine demonstration. I think it's still going. It's been like every day the same guy organizes. It's could be half dozen or 12 people. And I would occasionally walk over if I had some free time, take a few new photos of whatever 5, 10, or 15 people he's got, because occasionally there's a demand for those photos. But you can be sure nobody's running news articles on that demonstration that's happening every single day for 1,000 days or whatever it is,
Right.
500, 1,000 days.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot of moving pieces to all of this, right? That
Laziness is also a factor. I'll admit that.
lazy. Okay. But that comes with being a seasoned photojournalist and with a back problem or a knee problem
No,
or
no, no. I'm just like sometimes I say, oh, I don't want to bother, whatever. I mean, you make a choice what's available that day, and whatever. Today I covered a number of. I mean, you could be indoors at the Capitol covering multiple hearings and press conferences, or you could be at a demonstration or hunting for National Guard type photos these days. You can't be doing all of those. There's only so many hours in the day.
right. Yeah,
So you
yeah, yeah.
pick what you want. Some of it is it's 100 degrees out. I'm going to stay indoors at the Capitol. It's totally air conditioned, the whole complex. It is a place to get lunch. I'll admit that occasionally that comes up.
All right. Well, honesty is a good policy, Michael. I'm sure your mom told you that. All right. So sit tight. Let's see if we can get Jaimie systems working.
Um, these images are part of a larger project on protests in Texas. This is just a particular group of images that has to do, uh, excuse my voice, my throat is really raw. Um, these are images from Dallas and Austin protesting by Palestinian supporters and people who are protesting what's happening right now in Gaza and the West Bank. So instead of going through any kind of narration, I'm going to flip through the images that I have, and you can stop me or make a comment or a question, and I'll address it. Excuse me, I'll address it that way. I think it'll be more uh, expedient, and the conversation will be able to, evolve from that. So I'm just going to flip through the images, and there we go. Oops. Let's see if I can get it.
Yeah. So Jaimie, before you go to this protest, is there a sense of fear, anxiety that this could be violent? With of course, different fractions. Is that part of your thinking before you go? Because it is
It's
such an incredible
it's
topic.
it's funny because no matter what the assignment may be, I always have butterflies in my stomach when I go.
Okay.
So even if I've done it, you know, 1,000 times, you always are a bit on edge about it. I've never feared physically.
Right.
I've never been in a position where I think I'm going to get hurt. And for the most part, most people have been receptive to my presence. And it's not just photographs of Palestinian supporters. I mean, I've
Right.
shot protests that deal with a lot of other subject matter. But anyway, let me see if this works out.
Okay.
There we go. Let's see if I can get through this.
And Jaimie, how many people at this protest?
The ones in Austin got close to 30,000 people.
Wow.
The ones in Dallas were a tad smaller than that. And now it's no longer legal to do so, at least in this regard, when it comes to Palestinian supporters protesting publicly. You will get arrested.
Wow. And is there a big Palestinian community there, or are these people coming from different parts of Texas?
They come from all over. When I went to Austin, this is one of the images from Austin. There were people from Houston, from Dallas. I drove from Dallas because the rationale seems to be, and not just the Palestinian protesters, but the rationale being Austin's the capital. The main media is going to be focusing more on that rather than Dallas, which is kind of a secondary market, really. I shoot for Zuma Press, so as soon as I photographed anything like this, I immediately edit it and either transmit from the location or I drive home and edit and then transmit from home and file the images. So I have pretty much freedom to shoot whatever I want. I've always been fascinated by dissent, political dissent in this country, and protests in general just have an appeal to me.
Mm.
Many of these images are part of a presentation that I sent to what is the group's name? The name escapes me. Anyway, the images were chosen as some of the best of the year, and that's the reason I put them on LinkedIn, which is where you saw them and why you kindly invited me.
Mm. And Ethel brings up something that's sort of interesting. She shot a pro-Israel protest, but then the images were turned around and used negatively against Israel.
I yet to see a pro-Israel protest anywhere here. If there was to be one, I would definitely go photograph that. I mean, my point of view or my opinions have nothing to do with my job as a photographer. My job as a photographer is to be a witness to what's happening in front of me and to capture things as truthfully as I can. So
Right.
I'm going to try to stay on the margins when it comes to how I feel about what I'm photographing.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but what she's saying is that the photographs were of this, but
Huh?
then the photographs were of a particular subject, but then
Right?
they were able to take those photographs and with, I guess, different copy, turn them into something that they weren't.
These ones in particular?
No, just in
Yeah.
general. In general, shooting something and then, one media outlet buys them and puts a different caption to it, and now it has a different meaning.
Well, they can't really change the captions of the images. That's not for them to do.
Okay.
Zuma Press, what they do is they don't sell the images. They license the images, and the
Right.
caption is embedded into the IPTC
Okay.
information in the file. So that's pretty much married to the image. And I stick to, the basics: who, what, where, and when, and why.
Right.
And other than that, there's no judgment or opinion on my part. This happened here. This is what's happening. This is what is being photographed. This is what these people were doing. And
Right.
there goes the image.
And how frequently do you find yourself so will you gravitate more to a protest like this than you would to the King's Day thing? Is there a or something against Medicaid or something like that? Are things have more importance to you and you'll cover those more frequently?
No, I photographed the King's protest in Dallas. There were 12,000 people, and that one, it's in my website.
Right.
And I shot those for Zuma Press as well. No, I photographed everything from trans rights to immigration protests to the Palestinian rights to protests brought together by oppositions to the current administration and everything in between. So again, I don't choose particular protests. I choose images. I choose things that I think will yield images that will be worth sending to the agency.
Right.
My job is to shoot them. Their job is to hopefully license them. Needless to say, being a photojournalist is not your path to wealth. It's very difficult to
Right.
make a living doing this. You mostly break even at that sometimes.
Right.
Like these kids are Jewish and they were protesting in Dallas against the policies of Israel in the West Bank and Gaza. So you've got all kinds.
Yeah.
And the idea too was to show that bottom line for any protest that you cover, the bottom line is that these are people and they have a grievance and they have a right to vent that grievance. And my job is to show what they did and then let people make their own minds. That's basically the job to me.
And is there something you do to check yourself before you go to a protest with your own personal belief and then how you shoot? I mean, because I would imagine just from the human condition, it's hard not to, to cover these any event without some kind of bias because we all have an opinion on something,
Well,
right?
we're all biased. There's objectivity doesn't exist. The moment you put the camera to your face, you're already making choices. What's going to be in the frame and what's not going to be in the frame. From what point of view are you going to be shooting? Going to be shooting with a long lens? Are you really going to be going tight? Are you going to be wider? What are you doing? Those are choices that you make as an image maker. I go into whatever I'm photographing as a photographer. My job is to create the best images possible with what is in front of me. And I'm not going to claim unbiased because, as you say, nobody is. But I try to provide as truthful a window to what I'm looking at as I possibly can. That much I can, guarantee whoever's going to be using the images.
Right. Okay. And do you feel when you're done more than not that you get it right, that you satisfied your integrity? Do you find sometimes, I this maybe I went too far or I didn't go far enough? Like, do you second guess yourself?
When I shoot, it's like I always say, it's like fishing. You're not always going to get the best catch every time, but you got to show up.
Mm,
And you do the job to the best of your ability. You put in the effort. You're making a conscious effort to make the best images you can. And hopefully you will. And sometimes you feel like you're in a better place as you're making the images. They seem to click quickly and they seem to make sense as you're going. Other times you're shooting, and the more you shoot, you're telling yourself, this is just not working. It's not working. It's not working. It's not working. And sometimes you feel like that. And when you come back home and sit down, you see the images a little differently because there's been some distance now. And
mm,
you're not as close to having just shot them 15 minutes ago. And sometimes you find stuff that you didn't even know you had shot. So it's a strange kind of a process when you go into and for any assignment for that matter. But protests in general is the idea of meandering through them, going out to the outside, going in again, kind of trying to meander and walk through them as much as you can. It's exhausting physically, but
right,
hopefully you'll get something worthwhile.
right. Okay.
There's a Marine who's protesting in Austin. So you've got a mixture of, like, one of the things that I always attempt to do is to go to a more micro kind of a way of photographing. Like, for example, the previous image, you see a crowd and more or less gives you an idea as a newsworthy image of what was there. But then I try to hone in on individuals because it gives you kind of a closer taste of who's there, who showed up to this protest. One of them shows you the scale of it, and the other one shows you who's actually there, like that little boy, that Mexican man. So it's like anything. It's you work the scene. You're trying to find images that hopefully will communicate what happened clearly and as truthfully as possible. Hopefully.
And do you find it hard or difficult to leave your personal bias home before you go?
No, I kind of, I'm kind of able to put that in a little box in my head
Yeah.
and kind of strive for it's like I said, it's like fishing. You know what you're photographing because that's the subject matter in front of you. Now the question is, how do you go about producing images that show what happened, that are aesthetically well made, well composed, well exposed, all the technical matter that goes into making the images, that it checks those boxes. My biased point of view doesn't really come into the game, I think, because I photographed plenty of protests where I don't necessarily agree with the point of view of the people in front of me, but my job is to make the best images possible. And that's the job. I mean, that's just the job. What
Right.
I think doesn't really matter. The images will let you know what was there. Hopefully, they will not be biased. That would be my hope.
Right.
And I think that's the last one.
Okay. All right. All right. So thank you for that. We've we could open up. Anyone has any questions? You could put them in the chat room because we do have Michael and Jaimie and Mark here. So if anyone has any other questions, now would be the time. It'll be interesting, for the three photojournalists out there and the other folks who are here who are journalists, um, how you critique somebody else's collection of work of covering a protest. Is there something that one of you did that you really like that idea? You really like that angle? Is this, do you sort of question yourself, that was really great. The way he got that, the way she did that. Is there any of that stuff going on as you watch somebody and listen to somebody present their work?
Definitely. I mean, I always enjoy seeing other people's work, and big part of what I've done over the years is, interviewing and uh,
Right.
other photographers, and I learn so much every time I see another photographer's work for sure. And it's interesting when you cover the same thing and you see somebody's shots and you think, "Wow, wish I did that."
Yep,
So,
same thing. Cover the same event as plenty of others, and you kick yourself when you see how much better the other shots are than yours.
Right.
If I may
Yeah.
make a comment about something Jaimie said, news outlets have no obligation to use your caption, and that includes Zuma. Zuma may distribute the image, but the news outlet could do anything. I had one image I took in Ukraine that a Russian news outlet used for propaganda purposes, totally unrelated to what was the image or the caption.
Well, I'm,
So
I'm,
don't think that because Zuma or anyone else has it in their caption means anything to how it's used. Just FYI.
it depends what the market is. The moment that you said Russia, that has
No, no, what
all
I'm trying to say is there's no licensing that says you must use the caption, on the end user.
true.
So,
But if you submit the images without captions, they won't even look at them.
well, no, you have to put a caption. But I'm saying when the news outlet then licenses it, the news outlet is under zero obligation to use that caption.
That's true.
So I'm just
And
saying, you said you would put the caption in, they'll use the caption. definitely not true. No, I don't want to start an argument, but I've
Yeah,
had it
no,
happen. That's why I'm saying.
right. And so, with so many photographs, so many images coming into the wire, how do you guys make money?
Uh, funny joke.
No,
That's very funny, Frank.
I don't do. I'd like to do stand up, but I don't. No, I mean, is it a volume thing? I mean, like, you for the young
Have
people that.
better keywords than everybody else, I guess.
Now,
Okay.
because your captions generally they search for words in like it, whether they go to the website, they search for something to illustrate their article. As long as your caption has the normal amount of information, you don't necessarily need the keywords necessarily.
Well, for me, it's a non-linear payoff. In other words, getting images out there, whether covering the Olympics or whatever, it puts you out there. If you win contests or whatever. I mean, I teach workshops. I get big. Um, I mean, case in point, I did my North Korea book, um, and then because of that, it won the IPA Book of the Year. I ended up getting the Turkey advertising campaign. And so that's what I mean. And I
Okay.
just had an exhibition of my Japanese hot springs photos. And so if you invest in yourself, and so when we're going off and shooting these things, you're getting your name out there. Right? I'm sure all three of us, the presenters today, we love what we're doing, but if you strictly were trying to make money on those images, like the money, I mean, I had from what I covered, the ICE riots or whatever you want to call it. If I strictly said, okay, I'm shooting this, and this is how I'm going to make a living with that, I'd probably be sitting outside on a street corner. So, but it pays off not only emotionally, but just, people want to take workshops with you. You get other assignments that do pay a good amount. The key thing is just for people, out there or whatever. And I think most people know that already, is you come up with your own ideas. You don't wait around for the phone to
Right.
ring to do
Right.
something. Yeah.
It's funny you say that because I've always represented photographers in the commercial space, right? Getting ad jobs, and looking at the images that you guys all showed, you can see that's a great portrait. That little kid looked really cool. Like, and you could see how you could sell that idea to an ad agency. If you want something real, you want something genuine, a photojournalist can do that for you. They don't get involved in the hair and the makeup and the styling. They just do pure, beautiful portraits. Why you disagree, Michael?
No, I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing. I'm
Oh, you
totally
agree?
agreeing.
Okay, yeah, no, but because I mean, there were plenty of images there that were really, just beautiful images, shot on the street wherever they were, and like the cover of Mark's book, of that young girl, the traffic guard, I guess she was, right? I mean, it's, just a great image, and like your idea, Michael, with the signs, like different things. And I think that's what, from the commercial side, they're looking for people with ideas, right?
It
Like,
wasn't a plan. It just like realized I got all these signed photos
right,
and
but there it is. But it
became a
is
body of
something.
work, but it was not a plan.
No, but it is still something that somebody sees. Like those beautiful portraits that Jaimie had of those little kids. I mean,
Right.
those
Those are
are
great.
so sweet. I mean, that fits, any number of campaigns that, if it got in front of somebody, it would really be, it would really be, wow, that's really great. We don't need to go to a modeling agency. There are people on the street that, these guys can get. So, but that's so where with the world seemingly to be upside down, at least in our country for the moment, um, what is the next protest? What is the next issue? And with Trump, it's always evolving into something else, somewhere else. And now with this young guy, being killed. I mean, is there another sense of urgency or fear to go to a simple rally in Utah and someone ends up dead? I mean, that could be, in some small town outside of, Austin, right? Or DC or wherever. Do you guys, I mean, has fear come into your world in a different way since what's been going on?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. You're not fearful, but you're definitely apprehensive. You have cameras around your neck, makes you a target very easily. It's definitely becoming riskier to be identified as, media, whatever that means.
I use backpacks and others that don't look like photo backpacks, don't say press on them. Except when I'm actually have the cameras hanging, then obviously I'm press. I have a press credential. But otherwise, I pack up. You wouldn't know that I'm just some schmuck with a backpack.
I
Yeah,
carry,
it's
And
become,
so,
that's it.
I'm also from New York City, so I have situational awareness, paying attention to who's around me.
and not many people outside of New York use the term schmuck. Just just from a regional standpoint,
We use it in
schmuck
many
is very New
places.
York.
Yeah.
no, it's really become a
I'm guilty.
toxic.
I'm guilty.
I didn't
Yeah,
want to
it's become
call them a
toxic
putz,
environment.
but a putz is another great New York term. But
Yes.
and Mark, how about you? Do you have apprehension, more these days? Not so much as the target yourself, but just as going to these rallies, who knows what could happen?
Well, it's become an extremely toxic situation, unfortunately, when the president who's now back in office, the last time around, when he's basically saying, journalists are the enemy, there are enough people that believe it, that you can, depending on the environment, you can be a target. Uh, but I've worked in really intense places all over the world. So
Yeah.
so it it it, it it's it's not. I mean, as you know, I just got back from Ukraine again. I don't really have that um, personal apprehension, though. But it is, as you said, the awareness of your environment. That's why I parked in Chinatown, because I wanted a way to not get stuck. But it was more about being able to get to my car, not to run away, but just I didn't want my car to be stuck somewhere if the situation got out of control. And we are, unfortunately, maybe just at things I think really can. And I'm a very positive person, but I think we're just on the tip of it really going south. That people are looking for an excuse for a really totalitarian reaction to things, violence against
Protesters.
protesters. I
Yeah.
think we're
I
really
find that most protesters want their photo taken, so I've generally had good experience. But I'm
But
sure
I
there's
mean,
others who are not. I'm not saying it's a blanket statement.
but it is interesting to have this kind of a conversation about American protests, right? I mean, it's sort of a new category for us, that kind of over danger shootings. I mean, if somebody else got shot next week, would it be start to become like, the mass shootings at schools and synagogues and churches? Would it just start to fall into that category? Oh, someone got shot at a political rally. I mean, which, sort of changes, the dynamic as we've always known it,
But
right?
most people who go out to protest want to be seen because the protest is not a private event. So they want news media to cover it. That's what I find in general. Forget the 1/10 of 1% who are violent, but the vast
Right.
majority.
Yeah.
I think we're really, as I said, just being a student of history. I mean, things that we just could not conceive could happen in this country. Unfortunately, I think we're really it's a tinderbox. I think it can go off so easily. I mean, and it's such a toxic environment, and I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But as Mary Ellen Mark once said to me, hope has nothing to do with it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, so I wish I could be more positive, but
Yeah.
it is
I,
what it is.
I guess on some level the train has left the station, right? Um, and we're now sort of observers of what the radical people will do on all different sides and from all different places, right? We're just going to witness it, and you guys may document it. But who knows where we go, right? I mean, that's which of course is a scary proposition.
100%. And who knows how it's gonna play out, but or if we'll ever really recover as a country. I mean, every country, hits it's I always get confused between zenith or whatever, but I mean, um, I don't know how we're gonna get out of this. Um, hopefully cooler heads will prevail. There'll be another election or whatever, but this is just an aberration, but it's becoming so toxic. I mean that's a whole other
Yeah,
discussion.
it's funny that you bring it up in that context because today, while I was on a walk, I was thinking how, all that internal protesting that was going on in Israel before October
It's about
7th.
the judicial reforms.
Right, right. So no one was paying attention to anything else. And it almost feels eerily like, we're all preoccupied with Trump and everything that's going on. Is something else going on that we're not paying attention to? Sort of like what happened, at the kibbutzes, right? Like everyone was focused somewhere else, and then the kibbutzes got invaded, and no one was watching that. Are we finding ourselves going down that path where we're all watching this, but there's something else going here that we just don't know yet? I don't know. I hope not. I hope not. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, anyway, but that was just an idle thought that happened at about
But in
7:15.
Tbilisi, Georgia, there were nightly protests about the government, and they were covered early on. The protests have been going on for a couple hundred days, whatever it is, but they don't get covered anymore because it's just like the week, the daily thing now.
Right. Yeah. That's what is the next thing that he's going to be speaking about, right? I mean, we just don't know.
Oh, I think, like Michael said earlier, I mean, I've run into Michael. I was loving seeing some of the signs that I recognized from the veterans rally back in March, because that's when I ran into Michael over by Lafayette afterwards. And it's like Michael said, there are things going on week to week. The Ukrainian presence is always there in DC. There's the one guy that's always out on the one Ave. They're usually at Lafayette, but I think what happens is you get desensitized. I think it just becomes normal. And I think what I've noticed when I've covered stuff is people want to know, where the picture's going to be, and at times it's rough because it's protests and rallies that are going on weekly, and you're like, it makes me think of Greg Marinovich saying, unless there's bang bang, nobody cares. A degree, like for me, I think it gets to a point where you're out documenting because you want to document, because you enjoy it, you love it, you like seeing people out expressing their views. And I would say that even when I don't agree with people's views, I think, like you said, Frank, there's how do you get you need some discourse. You have to talk to people. I mean, even my image here, when I was down for Ukrainian Independence Day in DC, I made it a point to talk to these National Guard guys, because to me it's a little bit different than the ICE folks, signing up for the bonuses, and you did get a feeling that, some guys want to be there. Some of these young guys, I was laughing, these guys were all from West Virginia. And I think of the proximity of West Virginia to DC. For some of these guys wearing the flag, it's the first time they were ever in Washington, DC.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. I mean, it does get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm watching these guys pick up garbage. I'm watching these guys take selfies with folks in probably one of the safest areas in DC, that they're patrolling. I've had friends ask me, talking about, do you feel danger? I'm like, the crazy thing is, you go to DC National Mall, like, I don't even have a thought about issues. I know once you start branching out, there's some spots you
Right.
want to be careful,
Yeah.
but at the same time, but I love seeing the sign pictures because I recognize some of them immediately, and that's what I was like, Oh my God, I remember talking to some of those people too, which the
Well,
veterans one was very interesting, I think,
yeah.
compared to a lot of the other rallies, because I was not expecting the number of people that were there that day.
It was large. It was quite large.
Yeah.
It's great that people feel and have and express their voice. I mean, we sometimes we take it for granted, but it is a wonderful thing. So, I'd like to give the three of you the last word for the evening, and send us off with something we could think about. So, Michael, you're up first.
I'm in awe of the Jamie's and Mark's images, and I only wish mine had the emotional impact of theirs. And thank you for including me.
No, that's great. Jaimie?
Uh, I feel honored to be included with these two great photographers here and part of this community that shares the love for photography and dialogue about photography. Thank you, Frank. It's always great to come to one of the meetings and see the presentations from everybody. And it's kind of nice to show your images too. So thank you very much.
No, all right, thank you. And Mark, close us out for the evening.
Jamie and Michael, of course, fantastic seeing your great work. And Frank, I always appreciate you doing this, and Jay keeping us, steady flow forward.
Leave the man.
Yeah, I hope, and once again, whenever I mean, Mary Ellen really stuck it in my brain every time I say hope or wish. It's like it has nothing to do with it. But there's a lot of positive stuff, out there. And page 81, I'll leave you guys with this. If you really want to see why we do what we do, um, as a people, or as humanity, page 81 of Will and Ariel Durant's Lessons of History really spells it out about how we end up in this position. So reading this whole thing, I would highly recommend. I try to track that down about we as humans um, tend to get ourselves in trouble. And it was okay when it was sticks and stones. It's sort of a different ball game now. But I do think there's a lot of great stuff out there, and it's very important for us as photographers to also, record that as well, not just the negative side of history. But
No,
so
that,
back to you, Frank.
well, I thank the three of you for doing this, and we should have this as sort of an ongoing conversation, right? Because people are going to protest, and that's a good thing, and get different issues, and and if folks who are doing similar type of work, we can get them on as well. But I can't thank you again, the three of you, enough for doing this, and giving us insight, and giving us part of your courage to document these things, because without you, we wouldn't know. We really would not know, and that is a great gift that you give all of us, and all the photographers here, and all the folks who have outlets for photographers. We appreciate it, and we will see you in, I think it's 2 weeks. We have another set of presentations coming your way on the projection platform. So thank you very much, and thanks to all, especially the new folks who've come in tonight. Thanks for coming in, and we appreciate it. And we'll see you next.